Myles Lewis-Skelly is not just a left-back anymore, and Arsenal fans need to talk about this. If you watched Arsenal beat Fulham 3-0 on May 2026, and you did not feel something special happening on that pitch, then we need to have a serious conversation. Because what Myles Lewis-Skelly did in that game was not just impressive. It was the kind of performance that you tell people about years later. The kind where you say, yes, I watched that live. And I knew right then that this kid was something different. But here is the thing that makes this story even bigger. This was not just another good performance from a young player finding his feet. This was a 19-year-old boy finally being allowed to play in the position he was born to play. Central midfield, his natural home, the place where Arsenal coaches first fell in love with his game back in the academy. And when Myles Arteta finally gave him that chance, the results were jaw-dropping. 64 passes attempted. 64 passes completed, not one single pass lost. He also drew the most fouls on the entire pitch in a Premier League game as a teenager, starting in central midfield for the first time. So grab a cup of tea or whatever you are drinking tonight, because we are going to break down everything about this story, from where Myles started, to what Arteta said after the game, to what Ian Wright has been saying for months, to what this all means for Arsenal going forward. This one is for every Gooner who has been watching this kid and thinking, yes, he is something special. Where it all began for Myles Lewis-Skelly. Before we talk about the Fulham game, we need to go back to the beginning, because understanding where Myles came from makes what happened on May 2nd even more meaningful. Myles Lewis-Skelly is a Hale End graduate. For those who do not know what that means, Hale End is Arsenal's academy. It is the place that produced players like Jack Wilshere, Ashley Cole, and more recently, Bukayo Saka. When Arsenal produce a player from Hale End, it means something. It means that player has been with the club since they were young, learning the Arsenal way of playing, breathing the Arsenal culture every single day. Myles joined that system, and the coaches there quickly saw what he could do. In the academy, he played as a midfielder. That was his position. That was where his technical ability was developed. That was where his brain for the game was shaped. He learned how to find spaces, how to move the ball quickly, how to control a game from the middle of the park. But football does not always go the way you plan. When Myles started getting chances in the first team, Arsenal had a problem at left back. The senior squad needed cover and depth in that position. So Arteta deployed this young midfielder as an inverted left back. And do you know what? Myles did not complain. He did not ask to be moved. He just got on with it, and he was very, very good. This is one of the first things you need to understand about this young man. He has a maturity that goes way beyond his age. Most teenagers, if you told them to play in a position that is not their best position, would struggle mentally. They would lose confidence. They would feel like the manager does not trust them. But Myles just accepted the challenge and turned himself into one of the best young left backs in the country. That tells you a lot about who he is as a person. The moment Arteta was finally honest. After the Fulham game, a journalist asked Myles Arteta a very direct question. Why has it taken this long to play Myles Lewis-Skelly in his natural position in midfield? Now, most managers would give you a long answer full of football language. They would talk about team balance and tactical needs and the right moment. But Arteta did something that honestly made a lot of Arsenal fans smile. He was funny about it. He said, and we are paraphrasing here because the quote says it all, because probably I do not have a clue. Can you imagine? The Arsenal manager, one of the top coaches in the world right now, making a joke at his own expense about one of his own decisions. It was a brilliant moment. It showed that Arteta knows how to laugh at himself, but it also showed something deeper. It showed that when a player is ready, when the team needs it, and when the opponent allows it, Arteta will make the move. And on that day against Fulham, everything lined up perfectly. This is something that gets missed a lot in discussions about Arteta. People sometimes criticize him for being too cautious with young players. And yes, sometimes the frustration is valid. But what happened with Myles shows that Arteta is always thinking, always planning. He knew Myles was a midfielder. He knew this day would come. He just waited until the moment was right. And when the moment came, Myles delivered in the most complete way possible. Now, here is a question for the Gooner TV community. Do you think Arteta should have given Myles this chance in midfield earlier in the season? Or do you think waiting for the perfect moment was the right call? Let us know what you think in the comments, because this is a debate worth having. What Arteta said about being tough on Myles. Here is another part of this story that really hits different when you hear it. After the game, Arteta was talking about Myles, and he said something that showed just how close the relationship between manager and player really is. He admitted that he had been tough on Myles. He said this directly. He acknowledged that after Myles had what everyone agreed was a spectacular season, he came back and Arteta made things hard for him. Not because Arteta does not rate him, but because Arteta was trying to keep him hungry, trying to keep him focused, trying to make sure that one brilliant season did not go to his head. Think about what that means. Arteta saw a young player doing brilliantly, and instead of just praising him and keeping him happy, he pushed him harder. He made life more difficult for him. He kept him on his toes. And why? Because Arteta knows that the biggest danger for any talented young player is becoming comfortable too soon. History is full of talented young footballers who had one good season and then disappeared. The ones who survive and go on to have long careers at the top level are the ones who stay hungry, the ones who keep working even when things are going well, the ones who do not let the praise and the attention make them soft. Arteta was trying to protect Myles from that danger, and from everything we can see, Myles responded in exactly the right way. Arteta also said after the game that Myles had stayed very humble and very focused during the difficult periods. He said he knew the player was ready and available to help in a different position. And then, referring to the performance itself, he simply said he has been fantastic again. That word again is doing a lot of work in that sentence. It tells you that Arteta has always believed in Myles. It was never a question of whether this kid could do it. It was always just a question of when. The stats that will make your jaw drop. Let us talk about the numbers, because sometimes the best way to understand how good a performance was is to look at the cold, hard facts. Myles Lewis-Skelly, 19 years old, starting in central midfield for Arsenal in the Premier League for the very first time, completed 64 passes out of 64 attempts. That is 100% pass accuracy. Not 98%, not 95%, 100%. Do you understand what that means? Every single time the ball came to him, he found a teammate. Every single time he was in possession, he made the right decision. In a Premier League game, with experienced players all around him trying to press him, trying to win the ball, trying to force him into mistakes, and he made 0 mistakes in possession. He also drew the most fouls on the pitch. This one is interesting because it tells you something about how he plays. When a player draws a lot of fouls, it usually means 2 things. First, they are getting into dangerous positions where opponents have to foul them to stop them. Second, they are skillful enough to go past players or hold the ball in tight spaces in a way that forces defenders to commit a foul. Both of those things are what you want from a midfielder. These numbers are not just good for a teenager. They are good for any player, full stop. No age caveat needed. Here is a question that might spark some debate in the community. In terms of pure midfield performance on the day, where would you rank this Myles Lewis-Skelly display compared to some of the best individual midfield performances you have seen from Arsenal players in recent years? Think about it and let us know in the comments. What Ian Wright has been saying for months now, let us bring Ian Wright into this conversation, because the Arsenal legend has been one of the loudest voices talking about Myles Lewis-Skelly and what he is capable of. Wright has been describing Myles as a footballer. Now, that might sound like a simple thing to say. Of course he is a footballer, he plays football. But when Wright says it in that specific way, he means something very particular. He means that Myles is the kind of player who thinks about the game at a different level. A player with natural intelligence on the ball. A player who understands space and movement in a way that you cannot really teach. You either have it or you do not. And Myles has it. Wright has also been very vocal about the fact that Myles brings confidence to the team. When you have a player who is comfortable in tight spaces, who can receive the ball under pressure and find solutions quickly, it gives the players around him more confidence too. Other players know that if they pass to Myles, he will not waste it. He will do something useful with it. That kind of trust between teammates is worth more than any tactic on a whiteboard. Wright also praised Myles specifically for his ability to dominate in tight areas. Again, this is a midfielder quality. This is not something you develop playing left back where you have the sideline for protection. This is the ability to control the ball when there are opponents on both sides of you, to use your body and your technique to keep possession and make good decisions. It is one of the hardest things in football to do well, and Myles does it naturally. But here is where it gets really interesting. Wright did not just praise Myles, he also expressed real frustration that Arteta did not use these midfield qualities in some important matches earlier in the season. Wright specifically mentioned the Carabao Cup final. He felt that a match that big was the kind of stage where Myles' technical ability in his natural position could have made a difference. Now, that is a bold thing to say, criticizing the manager for not using a teenage academy graduate in a cup final. But Wright was not saying it to be negative about Arteta. He was saying it because he genuinely believes in what Myles can do in midfield. He believes it that strongly. And if the Fulham performance is anything to go by, Wright might have had a point all along. What do you think about Wright's comments? Was he right to push for Myles in midfield earlier, or is Arteta's patience and planning showing results now? This is the kind of debate that makes following Arsenal so much fun. The moment after the game. Now let us talk about the photograph that Fabrizio Romano posted on Instagram that really got the Arsenal world talking. The one that showed Arteta embracing Myles after the final whistle. Look at that image and tell me it does not tell a story. A manager wrapping his arms around a 19-year-old kid who just put in one of the best individual midfield performances you will see this season. The emotion in that moment is real. This is not a manager just doing his job. This is someone who genuinely cares about a young player and who feels proud of what that young player just did. Arteta's quotes with that post said everything you need to know. He said Myles fully deserves it. He admitted he had been tough on him. He said he was spectacular last season. He praised him for having difficult moments and staying humble through them. And he finished by calling him fantastic again. That is a manager speaking about a player with real affection. Not just professional respect, real affection. The kind that comes from watching someone grow up, working with them every day, pushing them hard, and then seeing it all pay off. Myles himself also spoke after the game, and his words were brilliant for a completely different reason. When asked about his post-match celebrations with the fans, he said he is a fan at the end of the day. He said he was celebrating with his people. He called the fans the 12th man. Read that again. A 19-year-old boy who just had the best individual game of his professional career, who just completed 64 out of 64 passes in central midfield in the Premier League. And his first thought is about the fans, about celebrating with his people. That is a kid who has not forgotten where he comes from. That is a Hale End boy who understands what it means to be an Arsenal supporter. And that might be the thing about Myles Lewis-Skelly that gets talked about the least, but matters the most. He loves this club. Not in a marketing way. Not in a we say all players love the club way. He genuinely loves Arsenal the way the fans in the stands love Arsenal. That connection between a player and a club is rare. And when you find it, you hold on to it with everything you have. Why this moment matters for Arsenal's future. Let us zoom out for a moment and think about the bigger picture. Because what happened on May 2nd, 2026 is not just about one game. It is about what Arsenal are building and where this team is going. Arsenal have been on an incredible journey under Arteta. The club came from a very dark place, years without Champions League football, questions about the direction of the club, a fan base that was losing patience. And then Arteta came in and slowly, carefully, methodically started building something real. A big part of that building has been trusting young players. Bukayo Saka was a teenager when Arteta gave him his chance. Gabriel Martinelli was young. And now Myles Lewis-Skelly is the latest example of a young Arsenal player stepping up and delivering when it matters. But here is what makes Myles different. He was not just thrown in and left to figure it out. He was developed carefully. He was played in a position that was not his natural one, so that he could develop different qualities. He was pushed hard when he was doing well, so that he would not get comfortable. And then when the time was right, he was given his chance in his natural position, and he was absolutely ready. This is not luck. This is planning. This is the kind of long-term thinking that separates good clubs from great clubs. If Arsenal can keep Myles fit and happy and develop him properly over the next few years, they could have one of the best central midfielders in the world at this club. Not in Europe, not in the Premier League, in the world. Does that sound too big? Think about it. He is 19. He just completed every single pass in a Premier League game, playing in a position he had barely started in before at senior level. His ceiling is somewhere that most of us cannot even see yet. What this means for the fans of Gooner TV. Here at Gooner TV, we talk about Arsenal because we love Arsenal. We talk about the games and the players and the tactics because this club means something to us. And stories like the Myles Lewis-Skelly story are exactly why we do what we do. This is not just a story about a good performance. It is a story about a young man from the Arsenal Academy who grew up dreaming about playing in the middle of the park for the club he loves. It is a story about a manager who pushed him hard and believed in him at the same time. It is a story about Ian Wright, an Arsenal legend, going on record to say that this kid is something special. And it is a story about the moment when everything came together and a 19-year-old boy stood in central midfield in the Premier League and showed the world what he is made of. There is a question that I want every single person reading this to think about and answer in the comments. What does Myles Lewis-Skelly in central midfield mean for Arsenal's plans going forward? Do you think this becomes his permanent position from now on? Or do you think Arteta will still use him at left back when needed? And if he moves to midfield full-time, who fills that left back spot? These are big questions. They have big answers, and we want to hear what you think. The bigger story about trust and patience. There is one more thing we have not talked about yet, and it is important. It is about the relationship between managers and young players and why trust matters so much. When Arteta admitted he had been tough on Myles, he was not apologizing for it. He was explaining it. He was saying that he made life hard for this young player because he believed in him enough to push him. And Myles responded by staying humble and staying focused. He did not throw a tantrum. He did not go to the press and say he wants to leave. He did not sulk on the training ground. He kept his head down and he kept working. This is the part of football that the cameras do not always show. The quiet moments, the hard training sessions, the times when a young player has to deal with not playing and still show up every single day with the right attitude. It is easy to perform well when everything is going your way. It is much harder to stay committed and stay hungry when things are not going perfectly. Myles passed that test, and now everyone can see what he is capable of. Ian Wright's role in all of this is also worth noting. Wright has described himself as being like a proud uncle to Myles. He has been a mentor to the young player. Having someone like Wright in your corner, someone who has been where you are, someone who understands the pressure of playing for a big club, that kind of support can make a massive difference to a young player's development. The fact that Myles has people like Arteta believing in him from the manager's seat and people like Wright backing him from outside is a big deal. It means he has a proper support system, and that support system is giving him the best possible chance to become everything he can be. looking ahead. So where does Myles Lewis-Skelly go from here? The honest answer is that the sky is the limit, but let us be a little more specific than that. At 19 years old, with the qualities he has shown, both at left back and now in central midfield, Myles has something that most footballers never develop. He has positional intelligence and technical ability that work in multiple positions. He can play left back if the team needs him. He can play central midfield when the time is right. That kind of versatility is incredibly valuable to a top team. But if we are being honest, and this community deserves honesty, what we saw against Fulham suggests that central midfield is where Myles can reach his full potential. The passing numbers, the composure, the way he drew fouls, the way he controlled his areas of the pitch. All of that says that this is his position. This is where he was always meant to be. Arsenal have a decision to make, and based on what we saw on Midfield, it looks like they might be ready to make it. If Myles Lewis-Skelly becomes a regular starter in central midfield for Arsenal, and if he continues to develop the way he has so far, this club has found something very special. Not just a good player, not just a solid squad option, a potential cornerstone of the team for the next decade. That is not small. That is enormous. And it is happening right in front of us at our club with a Hale End boy who loves Arsenal the same way we do. Final thoughts. We started this piece by asking you to think about how you felt watching that Fulham game. And now at the end, we want to come back to that feeling. Football is a sport that can break your heart and lift you up in the same week. It is a sport that demands patience and rewards belief. It is a sport where a 19-year-old boy can stand in central midfield in one of the best leagues in the world and complete every single pass he attempts. Myles Lewis-Skelly did that. On May 2nd, 2026, he stood up and showed the world what Hale End produces, what Arsenal believes in, what a young man who stayed humble through the hard times looks like when he finally gets his moment. And Arteta, the man who pushed him hard and waited for the right time and then gave him the chance, stood on the touchline, and when the final whistle went, he wrapped his arms around that kid and held him tight. That image says everything. We are Bella Gooner TV. We watch Arsenal because we love Arsenal. And right now, thanks to a 19-year-old boy from the academy who never stopped believing, we have a lot to be excited about. Share this post with every Gooner you know. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you watched that game. Tell us how you felt when you saw those passing stats. Tell us what you think happens next for Myles. This is our club. This is our player. And this is just the beginning. Come on, you Gunners.